This is where I go bright red, James, after that fantastic introduction. I really appreciate it, but it's a little too much for me this early in the morning. So as Babika was saying, I mean, what a poignant time to talk about promises and New Year's resolutions. We're at the beginning of the year, right? It's either talking about New Year's resolutions or futurology and strategy for the year to come, which I think are kind of one and the same, whether you do it personally or you do it professionally inside the organization. The irony is that statistically, you're more likely to fail by the end of the month than at any other point. So January is really kind of that tip-off point for relinquishing your promises that you made on January the 1st. So hopefully during today's presentation, I'm going to arm you with a few little key bits of insight that you can apply today, both personally and also professionally, so that you don't miss some of those key milestones that you've already played out for the year. I'm also going to make you aware of just how much your environment can shape and influence your behavior as well, and affect some of those promises that you might have made. So it's not all down to you, right? If you've managed to miss a couple of your promises or some of your New Year's resolutions, it might not be your fault. It could be your environment. It could be the people that you're hanging out with as well. So hopefully you'll find this of interest today, and I'm going to try and keep this to around 20 minutes. So James, do pull me up, let me know when there's like 5 minutes left to go, and I'll try and make sure that I hit that timestamp. So as James was saying, I'm now in the wonderful world of office furniture, but that's relatively new for me. I've been here, well, relatively new, 10 years I've been working for Herman Miller. Before then, I used to work in an applied practice in Oslo, Norway, for 3 years, teaching psychology and working with clients to help them fix and resolve the issues that they had. Now, over the course of that 3 years, I noticed something that I thought was really interesting. There was typically one type of person that would come through the doors of our practice with a very specific issue. And they would usually be a lady in their mid to late 40s suffering from burnout. Is anyone familiar with the topic of burnout? Right, okay, there's way too many hands going up. Oh dear, right, we might need a little bit more help than just me this morning. Yes, burnout is really kind of the epidemic that's been running concurrent with the pandemic. Burnout has exponentially increased over the last year or so. Before Corona struck, about 38% of the population experienced burnout. Of course, it depends on the profession that you're in. So if you are a doctor or a nurse, it's 50%. So flip a coin, those are your chances if you are in the medical profession of experiencing burnout. So this, for me, was something I was really quite passionate about. And when I left psychology, I knew this was something that I still needed to help the world resolve. And now I'm in the wonderful world of office furniture. You might think, well, how on earth can you go about helping people with that, Ollie? And I like to think of it as, instead of rehabilitating people after 15 to 20 years of working within offices, now we can be preventative with the designs. Before, I was helping people arm themselves with the tools and techniques to fix themselves and to prepare themselves as we throw them back into the same hostile working environments with the same toxic people that caused that burnout to begin with. And now I'm helping shape those environments so that people can have a better experience of work. And that is felt up to 3 degrees of separation from the people whose spaces we're planning for. So if you've had a good day, that is felt up to 3 degrees of separation from you. So your partner, your kids, their friends at school, their teachers, they all experience a little bit more elevated well-being because you've had a better day. So I think this is really good for the planet, and that's why I'm particularly passionate about the subject, and why I've chosen to work for Herman Miller now, because I can have a much greater effect than I ever could have had in the coaching and psychology world. So that's a little bit about me. Now let's just jump into the presentation. All right. I believe you can probably see my presenter's view, so I'm going to have to just switch that over. Can you see presenter's view? Do I have to swap?
Yes, we can see the presenter's view.
We see the two slides, Oliver.
Right, there we go. Okay, we're good now, right? I switched it over. Fantastic. All right. So over the next 15 minutes, we're going to look at exactly what is important to people. Now, there are unique to each differences for all of us, but there are also fundamental to all elements that motivate us, especially when we're at work, but this isn't unique to work. This is also relevant for like every element of life. So even if you are part of a criminal organization, if you're embedded within gang culture, as we all know that James is, then there are still things that unite us all together. So we're going to look at those 6 elements, or what we call the fundamental human needs that unite everybody together. And then we're going to look at how you can help prioritize those and maybe adhere to some of the promises that you've made for yourself this year. Before we get into that, I'd just like to say that, you know, we've experienced many different eras of change when it comes to work and workplaces and the places that we provide for people. Of course, we're moving into a new landscape now, this kind of post-pandemic world. So we've kind of really witnessed 4 distinct eras of change in our past. What we're saying here is that we really need to think on how we can shift from focusing predominantly on this bottom right-hand quadrant, which I think is where we spent most of our time, effort, and money, is figuring out what is good for the group and the organizational needs, often to the detriment of the individual needs, and how just paying you to do your job today isn't sufficient enough to give you 100% of the motivation that's required. So if you're familiar with any of the Gallup data, you'll know that actually only 15% of employees are actually engaged with work. And it's not because we're paying them less. Here in the Middle East, it's 14%. So how can we get people more associated with that heart icon towards the top, their passion, their purpose, and why they choose to come to work? So I think if we can focus on all 4 elements together, then, you know, we can kind of prosper together as individuals and organizations. Now, the research that I'm presenting you today is an amalgamation of 80 years worth of research. So this isn't Herman Miller research. This is like literature review, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Many of you will be familiar with that kind of pyramid to self-actualization at the top. But, you know, we looked at a lot of work from sociology, and really kind of the heart of everything that we do at Herman Miller, it's about people. You know, more so now than ever, people are realizing it's about people. You know, lots of our competitors just want to sell furniture to people, but in offices today, nobody's there. So the furniture is redundant, the real estate is redundant, but how can we serve the people's needs wherever they choose to work? So here's an example of just some of the areas that we looked into whilst analyzing the last 80 years worth of literature on the subject of human motivation and performance promises to a degree as well. So neuroscience, we're looking at talent management, group cognition, personality science, sociology, and even military studies as well, because there's some really good high performance there. And there's a lot of data that comes from the HR community. So we had a large portion of our time was spent sifting through that content. So, you know, what are the motivators of human behavior? How are these manifested within your organization? How does the physical environment catalyze, foster, and affect behavior? You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill, and he famously said that we shape our dwellings, our environments, and thereafter they shape us. To what degree our environments shape us is what I'm really interested in and trying to figure out. But again, we're really in the infancy of this research. So what are the implications for design and organizational practices, and how can you apply this to yourself? So without any further ado, let me introduce you to the 6 fundamental to all motivational factors that is literally driving everybody while they're at work today. Excuse me. We have achievement, security, purpose, status, autonomy, and belonging. So let's just run through these very quickly. I haven't got a time to do a really deep dive into the 6, just because we're limited on the scope of today's session. But what I will do is I'll send you a white paper that fully explains in detail what each of the 6 are. But I mean, the terminology it isn't really unique to us. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the terminology of achievement. I mean, that's what we're talking about today, right? When you set a goal and you achieve it, you get that shot of dopamine that flushes through your body. And, you know, that's like a compelling moment to keep that momentum going. Unfortunately, inside many organizations, we don't really experience the same degree of achievement that we're experiencing in our personal lives. So whenever you're on social media, you're sending you know, posts, pictures, comments, and someone hits like, you get that same shot of dopamine that flushes through your system there and gives you that sense of achievement. And we're experiencing that, you know, thousands, you know, hundreds of times every day. But in the workplace, where's your pat on the back? You know, maybe it's a bonus. Probably for most people, it looks like the annual review. And I don't know about you, but the annual review has never really been a very positive experience for me, or for most people actually. There's a great deal of research that comes out of Harvard that demonstrates that the annual review is really counterintuitive. We've actually got rid of that at Herman Miller, and we're looking at something completely different, which is more forward thinking rather than looking back into the past. Security. And I don't just mean like security, like not being threatened when you come to work, but like physical comfort, being supported whilst you're in the office or at home as well. So that has now been a conversation that's kind of sweeping the world, is does the employer have the responsibility to provide security to the employee while they're working from home? Because of course we've all been banished to our home offices, even if we have them. Whereas me, the irony is not lost on me that I work for one of the largest furniture companies in the world, but during lockdown, I didn't have any Herman Miller furniture. I was literally working from my standing height dining table, and my back just couldn't take it anymore after 6 months of lockdown. I'm sure many of you have similar stories. Purpose, aligning you with the reasons why you do what it is that you do. I gave you my purpose right at the beginning of the session. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning, why you do what it is that you do. You know, if you were to imagine you have 3 bricklayers, could be a man or a woman, but you've got 3 people who lay bricks for a living. You ask one of them to build you a wall. You ask another one to construct a house. And then you ask the 3rd bricklayer, we have this young family, right? They don't have a lot of money, but we really need your assistance with creating this house. You know, which one is going to have more attention to detail? Which one is going to go above and beyond? Well, it's the one that has the connection of why it is they do what they do. They've been given purpose by themselves or their organization. Incredibly important. Purpose is also associated with mortality. So we know that loneliness actually kills. That's why when you have like old people, like plus 80, when one of the partners dies, the statistical likelihood of them dying dramatically increases, their mortality decreases as a result of that, which is obviously a bit of a depressing thing to think about, but that's just how strong the effect of not having purpose can be. So purpose is incredibly important to everybody. Status. Now, status in work, we've kind of really done with space. So have you got your own corner office? That's how we've motivated people to want to propel within and climb that ladder within inside organizations. We've done it through space, but that was never really very appropriate because, of course, the ones who have the most status, the ones who've been there in the organization for the longest, from behind the closed door, it's really difficult to share their knowledge and ideas and opinions with everybody else. So we're actually losing a lot of the community by separating and segregating those people who have high status. So how can we represent status in a significantly better way? And it doesn't have to be job titles. Many organizations are actually getting rid of job titles now. Autonomy. I think William Wallace said it best. Freedom. That's what autonomy is. It's freedom to choose how, when, where, and with whom you would like to work. That's what autonomy really is. And now we're experiencing an elevated level of autonomy with work because we can work from home, we can work from offices, coffee shops, third spaces, and co-working once COVID has subsided, of course. But now our freedom is getting ever increased. And finally, belonging. Now, again, if we start looking at some of the neuroscience, belonging is a molecule called oxytocin. If you've had a child, you might be very familiar with that molecule. It's associated with the onset of birth, but actually the molecule itself builds a bond. It builds trust between mother and child. It is also an empathic molecule. So the father, the nurse, the doctor, everybody's oxytocin levels are elevated when they're in the labor ward. But it also applies for funerals, weddings, bar mitzvahs, christenings, all of these other elements where people come together. That's where belonging and oxytocin is increased. And again, because of the pandemic and because of working from home, belonging has really taken a hit because we haven't been able to connect with one another in an informal way. Formally, yes, we can do Zooms, but you can't have a fortuitous, a serendipitous Zoom call. It just doesn't really work like that. So now I would like you all just to either just open up the chat box, and there should be a link in the chat box now where you can download this diagram. If you can't download the link or you want to do it quicker, then maybe just do a screen grab or use the snippet tool if you're using Windows, and just take a shot of this kind of spider diagram that you see here on the screen. And it should be kind of this angular shape, status at the top, belonging at the bottom, and the rest of the fundamental needs around the outside. Now, what I'd like you to do is to prioritize. I want you to prioritize your promises for yourself. I want you to prioritize the goals that you have for the future. But you need to know what's the most important to you. Because for me, status is irrelevant. I don't care about status inside an organization, but you might, and that's completely fine. So on a scale of 0 to 10, oh, excuse me, I think my mouse has been writing on this already. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I would like you to just rate, what is your current feeling of status in association to your work right now? From 0 to 10, 0 being, I don't have any, I have no status. And 10 being, I couldn't have more status. I'm the CEO of the organization. So how do you feel about your status right now? Then when you've kind of drawn a little dot or made a mark on that status vertical axis, I'd like you to move over to achievement and just let me know what are your feelings of achievement at work right now on a scale of 0 to 10, sorry. 0, I have no achievement, I've done nothing. 10 to, I've just delivered this fantastic new project. It took years to accomplish, and I'm getting that dopamine flowing through my system this moment. Then move on to purpose. How much purpose do you experience at work? Are you aligned with what truly motivates you internally? Does your organization allow you to express that? 0 to 10, how much purpose are you currently experiencing? Then to belonging. Are you a part of the community at work? Are you segregated from it? Then to autonomy. How much freedom do you have to make your own decisions? Are you empowered to choose when, how, and with whom you want to work? And then finally, security. Do you feel secure at work? Are you supported? Are you sitting comfortably? So you don't have to fully complete this right now. I just wanted to introduce you to this exercise to know where there's a deficit, right? So you may have put 5 for status, 10 for achievement, 3 for purpose, 9 for belonging, and so forth, right? What's really interesting is this is unique to you. These are all fundamental to everybody, but the proportions in which you're experiencing them are unique to you. Now what I would like you to do is to rank order them. Let me know which is the most important. Because although security was a 5, it might feature at the bottom of your list. So maybe just on a piece of paper or in Microsoft Word, or even in just your head if you wanted to, I'd like you to put the fundamental human needs in order of priority to you. So is achievement at the top or is it at the bottom? Just put it in the order that it's kind of reaching out to you. Maybe it's kind of a gut feeling. It might not be a cognitive thing. It might not be mentally thinking, well, achievement's more important than status. It might just be a gut feeling. And listen to that as well. Just check in with yourself. Again, you don't have to fully complete this now. What I'd like you to take into consideration that when you combine those 2 exercises together, what you have is an understanding of what's the most important. So the list, the rank order of the fundamental human needs, that's what's most important to you. And then the spider diagram is where there's a deficit. So if achievement is the #1 priority for you and it's only a 4, then that's a cause for concern. That's something that we know that we need to focus on and work together to figure out. Whereas if achievement is at the bottom and it's a #4, then it's not a cause for concern at all because you don't prioritize that. It's not important to you. And therefore, there being a deficit there really is of no consequence. So you don't have to just do this with the fundamental human needs that we've highlighted here. This is called the wheel of life in coaching circles. You can do this with health, wealth, relationships, family. You can do this with any elements, but this is what motivates you at work. But you can take it broader into just life in general and figure out what is the most important and where there is a deficit. Now, at Herman Miller, we've been doing this for a number of years, trying to curate environments and measure people's motivation before in their old legacy spaces, and then again in their new designed, what we would call a living office environment. Living office is the terminology that we give to the process that we use for design. And what's really interesting is that it turns out human motivation is more than just an intrinsic thing. There are extrinsic, external influences, and space and design, interiors and furniture can have an effect on how you're feeling from these 6 fundamental human needs. Now, granted, it doesn't have a massive effect on all elements. So on average, it's about 5%. So you can see we've got 2 for purpose. That's the average increase that you can see just down here across. We're looking at 6 key clients here. So each one of these little verticals inside the segments represents a client. So this is the average result from 6 key clients from around the world. So for purpose, the average increase from their old environments to their new living office spaces was 2%. For status, it was 3, achievement 5, and belonging 6. Again, nothing dramatic there, but it does have an effect. But the biggest, most, well, astonishing increases is with the autonomy and security. And I thought that was really, really interesting, that we can affect people's freedom. So when I'm talking to architects and designers and our clients, I let them know that you literally have your employees' feelings of freedom in the palms of your hand. If you get this space wrong, that can really detrimentally affect people and when they come to work, and therefore their performance. So it's about taking a humanistic perspective. It's about focusing on yourselves. And I think that if we truly understand ourselves a little bit better, then we know, what are the important goals to focus on. Sometimes, just losing weight isn't a must for us. That's what Tony Robbins would call a compelling event in the coaching world. So unless it's a must, unless you can find out what your must is, it's going to be really difficult to adhere to those promises. And right now, I've just given you a really easy to adhere to and pragmatic process for figuring out your priorities and understanding where there might be a deficit. So like I said, these are fundamental to everybody, but what is unique to you is the answer on those very brief exercises. Thank you very much for paying attention. Oliver Baxter from Herman Miller. Please, do you have any questions you'd like to ask me at this point?